Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 1 Deadline decisions. This is a weekly series where I discuss your final questions and dilemmas ahead of the deadline. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, we have absolutely tons to cover today, but I am aware that I'm uploading this on Friday, which is before the Friday Game Week 1 deadline. So the deadline is today. So if you are short on time and you're watching this closer to the deadline, there are timestamps and chapters down below. Feel free to skip to the section that is relevant to you and hopefully see you on the deadline stream as well. So if you're watching this closer to the deadline, I might already be live streaming. If you are new to my channel, every single week on a Friday, whether it be a Friday or a Saturday deadline, every Friday you will get a deadline decisions video, which is this one here, where I basically discuss all of your final questions and dilemmas. I have a bit of a chat about captaincy, press conference updates as well. So if that sounds good to you and you want to get that video every Friday, please do consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. So the first thing I'm going to discuss today is actually captaincy. Now, for a lot of people, it will be, well, I'm going to captain Mohamed Salah. Fair play. I've got him first in my rankings here. And if you've not got Salah and you've got Haaland, it will be, well, obviously I'm going to captain Erling Haaland. So I don't want to overcomplicate it for those people that are just like, I want to captain my most expensive player. I trust them. I do think if you're choosing between Salah and Haaland, it's actually extremely close, as we'll discuss in a second. But for most people that have one of the two of them, I do think they are the standout captains. They're priced that way for a reason. If you look at the bookies odds, bookies projected goals for both teams, the bookies percentage chance of scoring 1+ goal, everyone backs these two to be probably the two highest scoring players across the season, and also in Game Week 1 as well, they've both got pretty good fixtures. So again, I don't need to overcomplicate it if you're already in that mindset, but for some people, you might not have Salah or Haaland, or you might just, with your captaincy, want to take risks and want to differentiate. A bit of advice I would give, though, I think there are plenty of ways to differentiate in this game. Rather than going for Elliot Anderson if you think everyone else around you is going for him, go for an Arias or a Wilson. Those are the ways that I would differentiate, as opposed to trying to get really, really clever with captaincy. It just usually, for me anyway, tends to backfire. That doesn't mean it needs to be Salah or Haaland. I just wouldn't get too clever with captaincy. So on your screen, you've got the non-penalty XG for all of the players last season, the expected assist per 90 as well. It's up to you how much you want to draw on sort of last season's data. But what I've also added is the bookies projected goal. So how many goals the bookies are suggesting that they will score in that game, and also the bookies percentage chance of 1+ goal. This is not me advocating gambling. I don't gamble myself, but what bookies do is they take into account so many things beyond just data, right? Because there's obviously a lot of money on the line here. There's so many factors that go into it. So it gives us a bit of an idea about what are we expecting to happen in these games from these players. And I've also ordered them by my own Raptor ranking. So if you're listening rather than watching, the ranking is Salah, then Haaland, then Palmer, then Saka, then Wirtz, then Bowen, then Marmoush, then Watkins. I think all 8 of these are fantastic. There are some players on here. I wouldn't even mind a cheeky punt on someone like Ekatike if you wanted to. So there are beyond 8 options, but these are the top ones. So yeah, I think if you look at Salah and Haaland, if you look at the fixtures, Bournemouth have lost basically their entire defence. They've lost Kepa, they've lost Howson, they've lost Sabani, they've lost Kirkes. And yes, they've made some pretty good replacements, by the way. And Iraola is an excellent manager. But Bournemouth at home on the opening day, and on the opening night, by the way, Salah plays tonight, it does feel like a really good opportunity to captain him or to captain a Liverpool player. That fixture does stand out to me. And if you look at the bookies' projected goals, Liverpool are projected to score the most goals in Game Week 1, and Salah has the second highest chance of scoring 1+ goal, actually behind Erling Haaland. Now, you might look at that and say, if Haaland's projected to score more goals, why would I not pick him? You also have to remember that is goals, not goals and assists. And as you can see here, Salah is significantly more creative than Haaland. And also, Salah gets an extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. So by all accounts, I think by a small distance, Salah is the best captain. And it's the reason why I have decided to start with Salah. Because not only is he the best captain in 4, and not only would I not mind captaining him in 2, I think he's the best captain in Game Week 1. So for all of those reasons, that's why I've got Mohamed Salah in my team. So I'd say Salah, then Haaland. If you do not want to captain one of those two, I think it is completely open. I've put Palmer in 3rd, just because great underlying numbers. Again, he always has chances because he's creative, he's got goal threat, he's on penalties, and he's always on the pitch pretty much for 90 minutes. So when I look at what I want from a captaincy option, I want secure minutes. A home fixture is usually quite nice as well. Good underlying numbers. Penalties is a bonus. And he's just got so many routes to points, Cole Palmer. And I think Chelsea have been playing really well under Maresca towards sort of the back end of last season. And obviously the Club World Cup, they were fantastic. So yeah, I really, really like Cole Palmer. He probably would be third for me. But you've got like Saka is so consistent whenever he plays. He could still be on penalties, by the way. But the reason you can see the bookies have got him as a 28% chance of scoring 1+ goal, which is the lowest on this list. They have taken into account that he might be either sharing or off penalties because Gyökeres has a decent penalty record. I just still think that he's an elite FPL asset and such a good option. And United are just not a good defence. I'm a Man United fan. I fully expect Arsenal to score at least 1 or 2 goals in that game. So I really like Bukayo Saka. I also think Florian Wirtz could be a great shout. His first game at Anfield in the Premier League, on the set pieces, playing in a really advanced role and a fantastic team. I think him versus Saka and Palmer, the three of them are really close. If you want to go a bit more left field, I think Jared Bowen, he's got such a good fixture against Sunderland, but I just don't fully trust West Ham. Again, bookies projected goals 1.46. So West Ham aren't expected to go and score like 3 or 4 goals against Sunderland. Here's Sunderland away. It just feels like this could be a trickier game for West Ham. I really like Omar Marmoush. I think he's very underrated in the FPL community, but again, I'd prefer one of the more expensive options. And then Ollie Watkins, I think, is just so consistent. He's got a really decent record against Brentford, obviously his old club as well. So I don't mind Watkins. In fact, Watkins has the 4th highest projected or chance of scoring 1+ goal here on this list. So maybe I'm slightly underrating Watkins. If I knew Watkins was definitely on pens, I think I would boost him up, but there's a chance that Tielemans takes a pen. I don't want to put you off any captaincy. I even think some of the defenders like Nuri, Pedro Porro could be really left field shouts. You could even go for someone like an Iliman Ndiaye if you think Everton score lots against Leeds. Like, you can do whatever you want with captaincy. I, on my YouTube channel, will never tell you not to do something or to do something. I'll offer my opinion and the evidence that I have for that. And for me, everything will usually point towards players such as Salah, Haaland, Palmer, Saka. And for me, the 2 best fixtures on paper are for Salah and for Haaland. I would lean Salah because of extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet at home, and just a little bit more creative as well as having that goal threat. So there we go. Let me know who you're captaining. For a lot of people, it'll be the Egyptian King. If you want to back against it, if Salah blanks on Friday night and you back against him for captaincy and you don't own him, you're off to a fantastic start in Game Week 1. Obviously, on the flip side, it could be a bit of a stinker. So guys, very briefly, I get tons of questions about where I actually get the data that I use in these videos. You just saw loads of data there. I get pretty much all of it from Fantasy Football Hub. So I actually use their Opta stats section quite a lot. I'll leave a link to that down below. You can get 50% off in the lead up to Game Week 1. So if there's any stats you want to check today, if you want to compare players or look at the data for one team versus another, home versus away, defensive contribution points. Like I've ordered this table by defensive contribution points. You can search for Bruno Fernandes. How many DEFCON did he get last year? He got 22 DEFCON points. So you can search all of that. Home and away. What was his home DEFCON points? 8. Actually, Fernandes was better for DEFCON points away from home. But you can look at all of this stuff yourself. I can get really, really nerdy with this, I'll be entirely honest. You've got points projections as well, which I find very useful. You've got the fixture analyzer. You've got player comparisons. If you want to compare 2 players, like I want to compare Reinders versus Anderson, you can do that. So there's lots and lots you can do. If you don't want to sign up and get 50% off though, what I would absolutely recommend doing is getting your team rated for free. I'll show you how easy it is. Upload a screenshot. Done. Get your team rated. So this team is, if I just optimize it for Game Week 1, so it's 91% when you first go in, but if we sort out the bench and captaincy, it shoots out to 96%. So there'll be a link down below to get your team rated for free, a link down below to get 50% off if you want access to all of the other stuff on the site. Do it before Game Week 1, you get the biggest discount, and it can also help you to build your Game Week 1 team. So in my complete Game Week 1 guide, which I uploaded a couple of days ago, I did discuss the best 4.5 million defenders, so feel free to go and watch that. It's still on my channel. It just say complete Game Week 1 guide, got Cody Gakpo on the thumbnail. But a lot of people rightly asked, can you suggest like a pairing that you like? Because most people aren't just suggesting or picking one 4.5 defender. They're picking 2 and they'll have to rotate them as such. But it's important to not just pick 2 defenders you like and actually pick 2 defenders which rotate really nicely with their fixtures. So on your screen right now, and I'll read them out for those that are listening on audio, you've got 4 defender rotations, which I think work really well in terms of the fixtures are really nice, but these teams also have 4.5 million defenders, because you might say like Nottingham Forest and Arsenal hypothetically have a good rotation, but they don't have 4.5 million defenders. So I think the 4 best rotations, because they have good rotating fixtures, but also good assets to choose, are West Ham and Crystal Palace, so something like Juve and Richards. Spurs and Crystal Palace, so something like Van de Ven and Richards. You've then got, which I've highlighted in green because fixtures-wise, it's probably the best for me, Spurs and Wolves, which I'll read out in a second because it looks unbelievable. So Van de Ven and Agbadou would be a great pairing. And then I've put, it's not quite as good for rotation, but you're chasing the upside. I've got West Ham and Man United because Juve and Dorgu don't rotate terribly. And again, they're very, very attacking players. I want to read out that Spurs and Wolves one because when I was looking into this and I realised how well Van de Ven and Agbadou rotated, it's made me extremely tempted to pick the pair. So, if you play, obviously, Van de Ven in his best fixtures and Agbadou in his best fixtures, you get Burnley. The only tricky fixture is Bournemouth away in Game Week 2 for Agbadou. You then get Everton at home, West Ham away, Leeds at home, Wolves at home, Leeds away, Sunderland away. They are all unbelievable fixtures. Van de Ven, I think, will be a really solid option. Obviously scored in the Super Cup, and Agbadou was a DEFCON monster last season. He'll be one of the top defenders for DEFCON. So yeah, Van de Ven and Agbadou. And in fact, because Spurs have such fantastic fixtures, I reckon 6 of the best 8 rotations probably involve Spurs. So I can understand absolutely why Van de Ven is so popular, because he rotates so well with so many other players. So for example, if you'd prefer Richards or if you prefer Lacroix, for example, to Agbadou, you still get Burnley, Forest, Bournemouth, Sunderland, West Ham, Wolves, Leeds, Bournemouth. It's still a really nice rotation. I really like Juve. So for me, myself at the moment, I'm probably choosing between, I really like the rotation between Juve and Dorgu. I really like Juve and Richards the more I look into it though. Because in this combination, you get Sunderland, Forest, and Forest scored 1 goal in 7 preseason games. So they're not a great attack. Then Sunderland, West Ham, Everton, Brentford. So you play Sunderland twice, Everton twice, Forest twice, West Ham once, Brentford once. So I'm now looking at pairing Juve potentially with Richards, but I do also really like Dorgu because you get 2 lots of Sunderland, you get Burnley at home as well. The other option you've got, by the way, is you don't have to rotate 4.5 million defenders. What you could potentially do instead is just select one defender you really like and then someone like Anderson as a backup from Fulham. Because you'll see Anderson's not on here. Because Fulham don't have great fixtures, I don't really love the idea of rotating Anderson in and out. But what Anderson offers is he's playing for a very decent defence and he's really good for DEFCON. So really, you could just have Juve as your main defender or Van de Ven. And just in the weeks that you want to play Anderson, you can. Or in the weeks that you feel like you need to rely on a 4.5, you've got him there. So you've almost got one player which you're attacking with the fixtures and then one that's just good regardless of the fixtures. I'm not sitting here and saying a Fulham defender is fixture proof, but you do feel like you can play him a lot of the time. So yeah, I'll leave it there because there are probably 14 or 15 different pairs that you can combine in the 4.5 million range. But for me, if it's purely fixtures, Van de Ven and Agbadou, I think is your best shout. If you want to combine a bit of everything, I do think a Spurs defender and one of Palace, even West Ham, even Spurs and United rotate quite nicely. Van de Ven and Dorgu, I think, work well. If you want Juve, like me, because you think he's really attacking, I'd probably pair him with Richards or Dorgu. Hopefully that's been helpful, and let me know who your 2 4.5 defenders are. So I received a very interesting question, which I think is worth speaking about, which was, do you prefer Morgan Rogers or Joao Pedro? And that might seem like a strange question given their different prices and one's a mid and one's a forward. But I think this comes down to the idea that we can't own everyone. Again, in my Game Week preview video uploaded a couple of days ago, I spoke about wanting Wirtz, Bruno, Watkins. You might be able to squeeze all of them in, but then you can't also squeeze in Morgan Rogers and Joao Pedro, so you do have to sacrifice. And I have built quite a few drafts where you get to that final position and you can basically go for a 7.5 million forward and then a cheaper midfielder, or you can go for someone like Morgan Rogers and then Guiu. So I know the prices don't quite work out, but there is a discussion to be had about whether it's worth having that sort of mid-price midfielder and Guiu in a 3-5-2, or going for Joao Pedro and then maybe having to go for someone like King or Dewsbury Hall and largely playing a 3-4-3. So let's discuss Morgan. Even if you're not having this discussion or debate between Rogers versus Joao Pedro, these are still 2 players that I would love to discuss. So starting with Morgan Rogers, I'm recording this very late on Thursday for a Friday morning upload. So I've not yet seen Emery's press conference, but Morgan Rogers has been pictured in training. I think if Rogers had one leg, I feel like he'd basically play every game and every minute available. Emery showed last season he doesn't rotate Rogers. 37 out of 38 starts in the Premier League. So if Rogers is even remotely fit, he plays. So my understanding is he'll probably start Game Week 1. But if Emery obviously debunks that, then we can discuss that on the deadline stream. So let's go under the assumption Rogers is fit. He is an exceptionally good FPL option, and I am very jealous of those that have him in their team because what do you get with Rogers? 19 attacking returns last season. He plays every minute, Aston Villa have fantastic fixtures. You know exactly what you're going to get. You've got some goal threat, some creativity. What more do you want from an asset? Like, he literally ticks every single box of what you would want. I suppose the only thing you would say is that he doesn't feel like he's got an overly high ceiling. Like, he's got 0.19 non-penalty expected goals per 90 last season and 0.15 expected assists per 90. That means if he plays 90 minutes in every game, he'll get 1 expected goal involvement every 3 games, and he's also has 0.86 big chance involvement per 90 as well. So he's good. He does get chances. And the thing is with Aston Villa, even with them looking to sign more attackers, not only is he nailed, but the goal share isn't usually that spread around. So I don't want to sit here and say too many negative things, but they are also slightly underwhelming numbers if you compare him to a lot of other players. Even someone like Ismail Assar is for 0.5 cheaper. He has significantly better underlying numbers. Now, you might say Rodgers is a better footballer and a better finisher, playing in maybe a better attack, and that's absolutely fine. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think Rodgers is really good value at 7 million, but I don't think he's a game breaker. I don't think he's an auto pick, and I don't think he's like exceptional value. I just think he's a very, very, very good pick at 7 million. On Joao Pedro, I think Joao Pedro is also really nice. Like, these are 2 players. I don't have either of these in my team. I would love to have the pair of them. Joao Pedro, for me, has such a high ceiling. Whenever I watched him at Brighton, I thought, this is a player. Like, really good footballer, strikes the ball well. And for me, the ceiling is a lot higher for Joao Pedro than a lot of the other players in and around that price. I would also say, though, with Joao Pedro, the floor is a lot lower. If you told me that one of these players blanks 5 games in a row, I'd probably say it's more likely to be Joao Pedro. I feel like he could be very hit and miss. The thing is with Joao Pedro, he's just not going to be a 90-minute man, even if you get him starting every game in the first 8 to 10. And by the way, I just don't think it will happen. I think Delap will start at least 1. He's not just going to sit on the bench every single game in the Prem. Even if you get 10 starts from Joao Pedro, he's also just not going to get 90 minutes in those games. Again, Delap has not moved there to just sit there on the bench. It would make no sense for Maresca to not give Delap the minutes. So with Joao Pedro, I do think he'll start 90 to 95% of games. He's absolutely their first choice 9. But he's also not nailed enough for me. Like, I really like players with extremely good minutes or at a cheap enough price to risk it. Because he's also not on penalties. And I think it was something like only 5 non-penalty goals he scored last season for Brighton. Now, he's playing in a much better attack. And again, I think he'll continue to improve. But even for Brighton, you can see here, 72 minutes per game last season. He's not got a perfect injury record. I mean, I think Joao Pedro could do so well this season. If you told me he scores 22, 23 goals in the Premier League, I wouldn't be overly surprised. But if you also told me that his minutes weren't as good as we thought they would be, he gets rotated a little bit and only comes away with 12 to 15 goals, which would still be okay, by the way, I would also not be surprised. So it's kind of, I don't know if I would say high risk, high reward. It's definitely high risk. And if you get it right and he does get the starts and maybe he gets closer to 75, 80 minutes, then he could be a brilliant FPL option. And again, if I could have him in my team, I absolutely would. Is he 55.5% ownership good? Over half the game I have Joao Pedro. Is he that good? We'll have to wait and see. I don't necessarily see it. And again, that's not me saying that I wouldn't like him. It's just you can't own everyone. So on paper, I think for the price, the difference, and the security of what you get, if it is a genuine shootout between Rodgers and Pedro, I do prefer Morgan Rodgers, just about. Again, it's very, very close, but I would lean Morgan Rodgers. Especially as I think overall across the first 8, I slightly prefer Aston Villa's fixtures. However, it's not a straight shootout because it's Rodgers and a cheap forward or Joao Pedro and a cheap midfielder, and the cheap midfielders are so much better than the cheap forwards. At 4.5, I don't actually think there's much in it. A 4.5 midfielder like King versus a 4.5 forward like Guiu, there's not much. But if you were to say to me, you can get Joao Pedro and Dewsbury Hall versus Morgan Rodgers and a 5.5 forward, or even a 6 million forward. Like, let's say you go Joao Pedro and Dewsbury Hall, or Morgan Rodgers and Fulkrug. Maybe Dewsbury, and I think that's 0.5 cheaper. So let's say Joao Pedro and Reinders versus Morgan Rodgers and Fulkrug. That's a lot closer for me. In fact, that would make me start to lean in the Joao Pedro camp. So when you look at combinations, I think I might lean more back towards the forward. But I need to see the rest of the team. I need to know about your risk appetite. I'd need to know what your projected minutes are for Joao Pedro. So it's difficult for me to advise just off of this because I need so much more information. All of that to say, Morgan Rodgers is brilliant. If we get positive news from the press conference and it looks like he'll start game week 1, I think he's in the top probably 8 midfielders to choose, and I'd love to have him in my team. And Joao Pedro for me is in the top 2 7.5 forwards. If you need a forward at that price, I would argue he is the best, if not the second or third. Let me know if you're going to have Rodgers or Joao Pedro. 2 players I think I probably won't have, but I would love to have in my team. So guys, usually in these deadline decision videos, I do a benching graphic to show you, in my personal opinion, how I would have the players from start to bench to help you with those really difficult benching decisions. I will always caveat this by saying, when I'm trying to make predictions in a single week about who will score more points, it's incredibly difficult to be correct because luck exists in football and in FPL. Like, I might on paper think Pedro Porro is a much better option than, I don't know, let's say Van de Ven. I think Pedro Porro is just so much better. That's why he's so much higher. Van de Ven scores a header. Pedro Porro gets booked and subbed off in the 57th minute because he's close to a red card, and all of a sudden I look like an idiot. But that's so difficult to predict. Even something more reasonable. Let's say Wolves do win a penalty against Man City, Strand Larsen scores, and let's say, I don't know, Ruta misses a one-on-one. Well then, yeah, they look very close on paper, but it might be a massive swing. So I'm not trying to cop out here with this. I'm just saying I would, in my opinion, really trust your gut feeling with benching decisions, because what you don't want to do is resent me and resent the decision because you followed someone else. So if you do not agree with where I've got someone on this list, that's absolutely fine. I'd probably trust yourself more than I would me, because in a single week, it's so hard to predict. With all of that being said, I really do target fixtures, but I also like good assets, and there is that balance to be had. So like, I've got Njai and Fulkrug at the top of this list. And by the way, these are just players that people ask me over on X. So obviously not every player is here. These are just the ones that people said they had a debate with. So I've got Njai and Fulkrug at the top because I don't know that you can bench players against Leeds and Sunderland when you expect their minutes to be pretty good. And Iliman Njai is on penalties as well. So I look at those two and I'm just like, I don't see how your attack can be that good that you want to bench those two. But then I've got like Ismaila Sarr in third, because I think Sarr is a fantastic asset despite playing Chelsea. Underlying numbers are great. Crystal Palace is such a functional team, and I think they could do really well against Chelsea. I think they could surprise a few. We saw how well they did against Liverpool in the Community Shield. Same with Morgan Rogers and Even Ilson. Like, you might look at that and go, Rogers got Newcastle at home, not great. Even Ilson's got Liverpool. Great assets. Even Ilson, if Kluivert doesn't start, should be on penalties, I'd imagine, as well. And Liverpool have looked anything from secure at the back, so I don't mind chucking Even Ilson up there. If I had Even Ilson in my team, I'd not be benching him for someone like Anderson or Reinders. I'd absolutely be starting him. Speaking of sort of defenders, I've got Porro, Aït-Nouri and Frimpong right up there at the top of the list in terms of starting, because they are going to be so attacking. I think in particular, Pedro Porro will be pretty good for DEFCON. He takes set pieces, but I just think if you've got these like 6 million defenders, there's just not a world in which when they've actually got good fixtures that you can bench them. So for me, they go towards the top. Strand Larsen versus Reinders and Anderson was a question I got a lot. So like a 5.5 mid versus Strand Larsen. As you can see here, I'd have Strand Larsen towards the top. We think there's a good chance he's on penalties, although it could be Arias. But I would just always prefer to play a number 9 that has good expected minutes over a 5.5 million midfielder. Even with DEFCON, even with them having better fixtures overall, I think I would lean towards Strand Larsen. I'm not going to go through every player on this list because I think it would be a little bit monotonous, but you can sort of have a bit of a glance at the list and work out where your bench player is, see if you agree with me or not. Again, please trust your gut feeling on these ones, but if you are genuinely 50-50, sometimes it can be pretty good to get my opinion. This is based on a combination of stats, eye test, vibes, and just where I feel like I would be if I had that benching decision. Let me know if there's anything that you massively disagree with. So guys, if you've not yet checked out Club, I highly recommend doing it. It's a free-to-play fantasy football mobile game which has a little bit of club ownership, FIFA Football Manager about it, but also retains the really fun fantasy aspect. I am not only in the game as a character, I'll navigate to show you that right now, but I'm also a shareholder within the company that created the game as well. So I'm heavily involved in the project. I cannot recommend it enough. Make sure to get involved before the Gameweek 1 deadline. I'll just do a little meet now to show you a bit of what that looks like. But you basically, build up your club, meet with the agent each week to try and get the best possible players. It's going to be a rare midfielder. Anyone decent? Fulham. This could be okay. Sander Berge. Iwobi at least gets good minutes. I might not immediately reject Iwobi. My squad is kind of full though. What I'll do, I'll decide later, because you can see at the moment I'm pretty stacked, but I highly advise that you get involved in this before the Gameweek 1 deadline. You probably only have a few hours at the time of watching. Give it a download for free. There'll be a link down below. Once you've downloaded Club for free, make sure to join my league, 3462SK7. That's 3462SK7. I'll link that down below as well if you want to sort of copy paste that in once you've downloaded Club. If you have downloaded Club, let me know who your best player is at the moment, and thank you for all the support. So I got a few questions about the best 5 million midfielder. So let's say you don't want to go down to Josh King at 4.5, but you also can't stretch up to Anderson, Reinders, Arias, Wilson, lots of good 5.5s. At 5 million, I think I've narrowed it down to probably 4 options. And for me, really, there's 2. So I think the 4 options that you are still choosing between would be Dewsbury Hall, Xhaka, Sarr, and that's the Spurs Sarr, and Baleba. I would rule out Xhaka, just simply because I think the other teams will be better in the Premier League, win more games, and while Xhaka will pick up DEFCON, and he took a really good free kick in pre-season, I just feel like I would prefer to back a better team if possible. But the fixtures for Sunderland are much better than anyone else. Like, Sunderland, for me, have the best fixtures in the Premier League over the opening few. West Ham, Burnley, Brentford, Palace, Villa, Forest, United, Wolves. It's a lovely run of fixtures. So you could still go Xhaka, but I wouldn't go for him. And with Baleba, he's actually got okay goal threat. If he stays at Brighton or moves to United, and I don't know what the latest is, at the time of me recording, United want him, but apparently it's going to be like 110 million. So regardless of where he goes, he'll be great for DEFCON. He might score the odd goal. But I just don't know that you want to bring in a player where there's uncertainty on their future. And if he stays at Brighton, which I think is still more likely at the moment, the fixtures aren't perfect. So for me, I would be choosing between Dewsbury Hall and Sarr. I think both of these have really nice opening fixtures, and they both have a slightly higher ceiling. Dewsbury Hall, I do think, will be dropped back into a pivot. It will be more like a number 8 that he plays as opposed to a number 6. He'll still be on set pieces, but he will be a little bit further from goal. He played as the 10 in the most recent preseason game against Roma. I don't expect that too often, because you've got Njai, Barry, Beto, Grealish now as well, Alcaraz. I feel like they've got enough attacking options that they don't really need to play him in that advanced role. And I don't think they have a ton of options to play in the pivot, probably alongside Idrissa Gana Gueye. I feel like they need probably someone of his profile in there. So I still think he'll be very good for minutes, and I still think he'll take set pieces because McNeil is no longer first choice, but he will be further away from goal. So I think expect plenty of assists, a decent number of DEFCON points, and maybe the odd goal. And for that reason, Leeds at home in the opening day, I think Dewsbury Hall's a great shout. I really think Sarr could have the highest ceiling of them all, though. In the Super Cup against PSG, he picked up 16 CBIRT, which means he would have comfortably achieved the 2 DEFCON points. He's playing as like an advanced number 8, is the best way to explain it. If Spurs play a 3-5-2, he's playing in a midfield 3. If they play more of a 4-2-3-1, he might play as more of a 10. The only concern I have is that Spurs are looking at Eze. Spurs were looking at Savinho. Spurs are very clearly trying to add more attacking players. They've also got lots of wingers, right? They can play Richarlison, they can play Kudus, they can play Tell, they can play, if they sign these players, other ones, which also means that some of these players might drift into the number 10. Could you see a world where if they get someone like Eberechi Eze, where it's Solanke, Eze, Kudus and Johnson, or Kudus and Tell, if that's the case, Sarr either doesn't play, which I don't think is as likely, or he drops a bit deeper. So I don't necessarily expect Sarr to continue playing a more advanced role, but if he does drop deep and he still gets the starts, he'll obviously be really good for DEFCON points. With all of that being said, if I was to order these 5 million midfielders right now, I would say Dewsbury Hall, Sarr, Xhaka, Baleba. So I think Dewsbury Hall's a really nice pick. If I need the extra 0.5, which I potentially might do ahead of the deadline, and I want to try and free up money, I have looked at potentially doing something like Reinders to Dewsbury Hall in my own team. So yeah, definitely consider all 4 of them, and let me know who you're picking if you're going at that cheaper price. So I had a couple of questions about the Chelsea defence, which I thought I would just put together and discuss, because I do think Chelsea are a really underrated defence. I've been saying that for a season now. Last year, they were 3rd for non-penalty expected goals conceded. So based on underlying data, they were the 3rd best defence in the Premier League. I think they are going to have a really good season again, and I think even with the Colwill ACL injury, they will still be a really decent defence. I like the opening fixtures overall. So the 2 questions were, do you think Cucurella is being underrated due to people largely picking Sanchez? And then the second question was, is Tosin nailed at 4.5 million? The models seem to love him. And I did have a check, yes. Because if he gets starts, he's 4.5 million. He fits really, really nicely. So I'll address the Cucurella question first. Yes and no. Do I think Cucurella is being underrated? Yes, I think he's a fantastic 6 million defender. I'm actually going to discuss the best 6 million defenders in the next section. So I think Cucurella is fantastic. But you've kind of answered your own question there. He's being underrated because you've got a 5 million route into the Chelsea defence. We'll discuss in a second with Tosin. You've got a potential 4.5 million route into the Chelsea defence. Now, neither of those will have the ceiling that Cucurella has. Cucurella last season got back-to-back 15 pointers. The man plays incredibly advanced. He's very nailed on because no one at Chelsea can do what he does in that left-back role. He'll drift into the number 10 pockets at times. He'll invert really well. And he's really good in the air, Cucurella. He seems to get on the end of crosses all the time. So I really rate Cucurella as a footballer and as an FPL asset. And at 6 million in isolation, yes, he's fantastic. But for a lot of people, they're looking at, you've got Palmer, Joao Pedro, potentially at some point like Esteval, Gittins, maybe even a Pedro Neto. Like, there are enough Chelsea attacking players where you could foresee yourself wanting at least 2 of them. if you might want at least two, let's even say Palmer and Joao Pedro, then you probably don't want to pick Cucurella and Sanchez. You probably don't want to double up on the Chelsea defence. So then it comes back to the question, does Cucurella offer enough to be worth 1 million more than Sanchez? What else could you do with that 1 million? Because is Cucurella better than Sanchez? Yes. But if it's like a combination where it's, I don't know, Cucurella and King, or if you do Cucurella to Sanchez and then go for a cheaper defender, then you are able to go and get Reinders or Anderson, then obviously that combination overall will be slightly stronger. That's probably a terrible example, but you get what I mean. What can you do by saving that 1 million in the Chelsea defence? So I guess the answer to your question is yes and no. If you've got Cucurella in your team and you like the way your team looks, I would absolutely keep him. He is definitely a nice asset. The next question around Tosin. The simple answer to this, I think, early on, yes, he's pretty nailed on. I would be supremely surprised if Tosin doesn't start the first few games. Beyond that, I just don't know. So Tosin, I think, is actually right-footed. Apologies if I'm wrong, but he plays as left centre-back for Chelsea. So Tosin's playing that left centre-back role. I still think there's a chance that Chelsea go out in the transfer window and pick up another centre-back. I know that sounds crazy, but they signed Hato, I still don't know exactly how to pronounce that, but they signed him before the Colwill injury. He's a left centre-back. He's left-footed. So he could play that Tosin role, absolutely. But that was, again, the transfer was made before the injury. So they didn't anticipate the Colwill injury. So on that basis, they might go and get another centre-back to cover for Colwill for the season. So again, the short answer is yes, early on I think he's nailed. Beyond the first international break, so between game weeks 3 and 4, there's an international break. I can't promise you that longer term or even medium term that he starts every single game. I'm not a Chelsea fan. I don't have that info. And even Chelsea fans, I don't think will fully know what Maresca's thinking and what he can see, obviously, on the training ground too. So if you want to take an early risk, maybe go for it. I guess my question to you, is Tosin worth the risk? Do you think he is that great of an option at 4.5 that it's worth taking the risk with? Do you not think that someone like Anderson at Fulham would do a perfectly viable job as an alternative? I think there are enough good 4.5 defenders, considering that Tosin's not going to have an extremely high ceiling or be absolutely amazing for DEFCON. I just don't think I would take that risk. So yeah, think Cucurella is great. Tosin could serve you well at 4.5, but the reason I've not considered either is I do like Sanchez and I don't want to go double Chelsea defence. So in my own team at the moment, I actually can't afford a 6 million defender. My most expensive defender is Pedro Porro at 5.5, but lots of people have the space for one 6 million defender. So if I could only choose one 6 million defender, who would it be? In short, this isn't an easy question to answer because I think most of the 6 million defenders offer good value for different reasons. And I think it largely comes down to who you are as an FPL manager, what your philosophy of play is as such, and how much risk appetite you have and what you're trying to achieve. Do you want a steady player that plays every game and will get you good points? If so, Van Dijk, Gvardiol, Gabriel, excellent options. Or do you want to chase an incredibly high ceiling? In which case, I think Frimpong and Ryan Aït-Nouri, and to some extent, I suppose, Cucurella, could do that for you. For me, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, if I'm paying 6 million for a defender, I don't really want a steady Eddie that trickles along, right? I want a player that I think could go out there and get me back-to-back 15 pointers like Cucurella did last season. For me, as a result, I would not, and I'm not saying they're bad options. Actually, on paper, again, if you're following review, algorithms, models, whatever it is, they're probably going to suggest players like Virgil van Dijk, or maybe even a Josko Gvardiol, because these players are so secure for minutes, and again, they will still get you the clean sheet points. They'll get you the odd attacking return in DEFCON. But for me, if I was to say my 3 favourite 6 millions, it would be one of Gabriel, Frimpong, or Ryan Aït-Nouri. Now, I'm recording this after the Arne Slot press conference. No one seemingly asked about Connor Bradley. I'm sure we might get a bit of an update before the deadline, but there was no information around whether Connor Bradley's injury is serious, how long he's out for. I just think that Frimpong, if he looks secure for starts across the first few, just has such a high ceiling. He's playing such an advanced attacking role. He's got real quality in the final third. So I like Frimpong, but I think I might slightly prefer Ryan Aït-Nouri. There's a lot of sort of noise coming from the City camp at the moment about how impressed Pep Guardiola is of Ryan Aït-Nouri. We've seen what he did with Gvardiol and Nico Riley last season at the back end of the season, right? They played a really advanced role as that sort of left wing back role for Man City. I really remember there was a game against Spurs where Gvardiol achieved over 1 XGI in that game playing as the left back. The left back in this Pep system, unless he suddenly changed it, is going to be so attacking. There have even been suggestions that Ryan Aït-Nouri plays really well in the number 10 role. He's not going to start there, but I think what they're talking about is the pockets that he drifts into. He's really good there. So I just look at him and I don't mind the opening fixtures against Wolves, Spurs, Brighton, United. I really think he's got an extremely high ceiling on him. So for that reason, I would be really tempted by Ryan Aït-Nouri. I do think that maybe my favourite, though, might still be Gabriel. I just think Arsenal defence are always so underrated. He's got really good... I think we forget how good Gabriel's goal threat is. It actually dropped off just before his injury because Saka was injured, and Saka's delivery is so good from corners. Most of Gabriel's headed goals come from a Saka corner. So with Saka fit and Gabriel fit, the goal threat, the clean sheet potential, even with their opening fixtures, I still really rate Gabriel as an option. The only concern is Arsenal defenders will get virtually zero defcon. They just don't defend enough because of the way Arsenal play to get those defensive contribution points on a consistent basis. So with Gabriel, you're heavily reliant on clean sheets and heavily reliant on attacking returns because someone like Van Dijk would definitely tick along with more defensive contribution points. So yeah, my three favourites would be Frimpong, Gabriel, Ait-Nouri. I'd probably just lean Gabriel, maybe Ait-Nouri. That doesn't mean that I don't like Van Dijk, Cucurella, Gvardiol, even Kirkes. They're all really decent options. So guys, final thing, I just wanted to say that I will be going live at 4 PM UK time for the Gameweek 1 Deadline stream, which is 2.5 hours before the Gameweek 1 Deadline to get all of your questions answered and also lock in my final team as well. So navigate to my YouTube channel. Depending when you're watching this, I might be live at the time of you watching this. So yeah, head over. I'll be live at 4 PM and I'll hopefully answer as many of your questions as possible. And let's see what team I finally go into Gameweek 1 with. So guys, there you have it. That is my Gameweek 1 deadline decisions. If you've got to this point and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. As I said, I'll do this video every single week along with lots of other content on the channel as well. As I said, do check out Club. There'll be a link down below to download for free. Highly recommend you get on it before Gameweek 1 so that you can experience the full season. If you've not yet got a free team rating, there'll be a link down below to get a free team rating. And if you want to get 50% off at Fantasy Football Hub, please do use my link down below as well ahead of the Gameweek 1 deadline. Until next time, which will be the deadline stream very soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.